Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, the FIFA World Cup playoff games are officially here, and over the next week, we will see 22 nations competing against each other, but only 6 of them can qualify to the World Cup. Will Italy miss their 3rd World Cup in a row? Will some of these nations make it to their 1st World Cup in history? And will some of these nations who are currently going through a war make it to the World Cup? That is what I'm going to be predicting in today's video. We got some crazy World Cup playoff games, and in today's video, I'm going to be predicting which teams will be advancing to the finals. And obviously, after the first round of games will be played, I will be uploading a final prediction where I will be predicting which 6 teams will advance to the World Cup. Before I get into this video, I got some exciting news for you guys. I will be doing my first ever live stream in the World Cup playoff semifinal game between Italy against Northern Ireland. I'll be doing a watch along right here on the channel. I will be starting about 30 minutes before the game, and obviously I'm going to be doing a watch along for the whole game, and then at the end of the game I will be doing a review and talking about how the game went. So if you guys are excited for my first live stream, remember to click on the notification bell down below so you can get notified when I go live. But without further ado, let's get right into these predictions. Starting off with Path A, we have 2 semi-final matches, Italy against Northern Ireland and Wales against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Starting off with Italy against Northern Ireland, and as an Italian fan, Italy need to win this game. This is the game that they must win, and if Italy fail to beat Northern Ireland in the semi-finals, not even get to the final, this will be a national disgrace. There will be outrage in Italy, and everyone of Italian descent will literally never watch this sport again. But in saying that, I do think Italy will be able to beat Northern Ireland. Now, yes, Northern Ireland are a decent team. They're a very physical side, and I do think that their strength is their defense, with players like Hume, with players like Daniel Ballard. But in my opinion, one of their best players in Connor Bradley and one of their best young players is currently injured, and he will miss this game, and I think that would be a big detriment to Northern Ireland. Italy definitely have a better squad, a more experienced squad, and just better players in general than Northern Ireland. No disrespect to Northern Ireland, but for this prediction, I do think Italy will be winning with the home advantage 2-0 against Northern Ireland. Moving on to the other Path A semi-final match, we have Wales against Bosnia and Herzegovina. This game is being played in Cardiff, and I do think that is a really big advantage to Wales, and obviously if they do win this and advance to the final, then the final match will also be played in Cardiff. So I do think that Wales probably have the biggest advantage out of any other team in Path A. And with that being said, I think Wales as a team are a very good attacking team with players like Harry Wilson, who's been very good in the Premier League. They also have players like Brennan Johnson, who's a very good player, Dan James, a more experienced player, and even one of their more underrated players in Sorba Thomas. I think he's been very, very good with Stoke City, and I think he could possibly do very good in this game for Wales. But defensively, it's fair to say that Wales are a mess. If you look at them in the qualifiers, they conceded many goals. We saw them concede so many goals across both legs against the likes of Belgium. Obviously, one of their best and most experienced defender in Ben Davies will be injured for this game, and he will be missing out. So I think that is a disadvantage for Wales. And if you look at Bosnia, they can score the goals. If you remember in the qualifiers, we saw them beat the likes of Malta 4-1. They beat Romania 3-1, and with Edin Dzeko leading the line, I know he's almost 40 years old, but he can still score the goals. So in my opinion, this game, the winner will depend on which team is better in the attack. But like I mentioned, I do think Wales have a more complete team than Bosnia, and with the home advantage, I'm going to predict a 3-2 win for Wales. Crazy match. Moving on to Path B, we have Ukraine, Sweden, Poland, and Albania. Starting off with the first match, we have Ukraine against Sweden. Sweden were the worst team in the World Cup qualifiers. They were absolutely horrible, and for a nation who have so many great players, especially in the attack, with players like Isak, players like Gyökeres, players like Alanga, Kulusevski, Bergvall, they have so many phenomenal players in the attack, some very good young players as well. And in my opinion, Sweden are definitely a nation who in recent years have really been climbing the rankings, and their team looks better and better each year. But this year, under Graham Potter, they have been a disappointment. They have been such a disappointment. They lost almost every single game in the qualifiers. We saw them lose against Switzerland. We saw them lose against Kosovo. They were conceding goal after goal after goal. And for that reason, I don't see any way that Sweden beat Ukraine. Players like Isak, Bergvall, Kulusevski have been suffering through injury this season. And with that being said, I think a lot of pressure will be put on Gyökeres because he is going to be their main attacker in this game against Ukraine. And for that reason, I just don't think they have what it takes. So I'm going to predict Ukraine to beat Sweden in the semifinals 2-1. Moving on to the other semifinal game in Path A, we have Poland against Albania. Albania were actually pretty surprising in the qualifiers, and I feel like Albania have a lot of players that can score goals. They have Armando Broja, they have Aslani in the midfield, they have Jimshiti in the defense. They have some decent players around their squad, and with that being said, I don't think this will be that easy of a game for Poland. But Poland are the favorites, and in my opinion, they are the better team. In recent matches, we've seen them beat Finland, they beat Lithuania, they drew against Netherlands, they most recently beat Malta. So with that being said, I do feel like they are on better form than Albania. And if you look at Poland, they've made it to the last 2 World Cups in a row. Poland in the last decade have been a very, very strong team in international competitions. So for that reason, I'm going to have to predict Poland to beat Albania 2-0. Moving on to playoff Path C, we have Slovakia, Kosovo, Turkey, and Romania. Starting off with the first match, we have Slovakia against Kosovo. I think a lot of people will probably predict Slovakia to win against Kosovo in the semifinal, but in my opinion, I think this is going to be the first big upset in this video where I think that Kosovo are actually going to beat Slovakia. Now, if you look at Slovakia in the qualifiers, they were pretty good. Defensively, they are a pretty strong team. And in most games they played, they were pretty solid defensively, other than that last game where they lost 6-0 against Germany. But if you look at their attack, they have had struggle scoring goals. Out of their 6 qualifiers games, they scored 6 goals, meaning that on average, they scored 1 goal per game. But if you look at a team like Kosovo, their attack is the best part of their team. Now defensively, they aren't the best, and it looks like Rahmani will still be injured for this game, which is a big loss for Kosovo. But if you look at their attack with players like Aslani, players like Muriki, players like Zagrova, if he comes back from injury, these players can score goals. Muriki is one of the top goal scorers in La Liga with Mallorca. Aslani is doing great in the Bundesliga. Obviously, we know how good of a talent Zagrova is, and I think that is Kosovo's main strength. I think they could score multiple goals against Slovakia. So for that reason, I'm going to predict a 3-1 win for Kosovo. Moving on to the next match, we have Turkey against Romania. This is the earliest match as it is being played a couple hours before the other semi-final playoff matches. And in my opinion, I think Turkey are 100% the favorites. I think Turkey are one of the best teams in these playoffs. And I think they have a really, really good squad. If you look at their attack and their wingers with players like Yilmaz and Yildiz, obviously Arda Güler in the midfield looks like the future for Turkey. And defensively, they still have some good players as well. If you look at Turkey in the qualifiers, obviously they did lose 6-0 in that game against Spain, which was completely horrible. But in the other matches, we saw them draw 2-2 against Spain. They beat Bulgaria 2-0. We saw a 4-1 win against Georgia and a 6-1 win in the earlier match against Bulgaria. They were scoring loads of goals, and that's why this Turkey team is so dangerous, because their attack and their midfield is very, very strong. I feel like defensively, Romania aren't the best team. We saw in the qualifiers they conceded 3 goals against Bosnia, and even earlier than that they drew 2-2 against Cyprus, which is a team that Romania should have 100% beat. And with those inconsistencies, I do think Turkey will be able to exploit Romania. So I'm going to predict a 3-1 win for Turkey. Moving into playoff Path D, we have Czech Republic, Ireland, Denmark, and North Macedonia. Starting off with the first match, we have Czech Republic against Ireland. Sadly for Czech Republic, I feel like they're just too inconsistent. If you look at them in the qualifiers, we saw them lose 2-1 against Faroe Islands. They beat San Marino only by 1 goal. Majority of teams in world football would beat San Marino by at least 5 goals. So for them to only score 1 goal, it's not good enough from Czech Republic. I think they are a decent team. They have some decent players. Obviously, Patrick Schick in the attack, we all know he can score goals. And I think in this game, if Patrick Schick can do better than Troy Parrott, then Czech Republic could possibly get a decent result. But I think that is a big matchup. But in my opinion, I've seen more from Troy Parrott. I think he's been better in recent matches. And I think Ireland as a team have been a more consistent team than Czech Republic. And like I already mentioned, with Troy Parrott in the striker position, he scored multiple goals in the qualifiers. And I think he's been a very consistent striker for Ireland. So for that reason, I got Ireland slightly edging this game 1-0. And finally, the last match is Denmark against North Macedonia. Both of these teams suffered horrible defeats in their last qualifying match. We saw Denmark lose 4-2 against Scotland, and that ended up up kicking them out of the direct qualification to the World Cup as Scotland made it to the World Cup. And on the other side, North Macedonia lost 7-1 against Wales. So in recent games, both of these teams defensively have not been good at all. And if you look at North Macedonia, I think they have been pretty good other than that last game in the qualifiers. We saw them get a decent draw against Belgium, a couple other decent results as well. But the problem I have with North Macedonia is in their big games, they really struggle to score. When if you look at Denmark, on the other hand, they can score many goals. We saw them score 3 goals against Greece. They scored 6 goals against Belarus. So they have the scoring capabilities that I don't think North Macedonia have. And obviously Denmark have a very well-rounded team. They have some great attackers, they have good midfielders, and defensively they have a lot of great players as well. So I think they're a very well-drilled team. They have a very good team across the pitch, and for that reason I just don't see North Macedonia being able to take this win. So for that reason, I'm going to predict a 2-0 win for Denmark, and they will advance to the final match. Moving on to the intercontinental playoffs, and the semi-final match we have in Path A is Jamaica against New Caledonia. Obviously all of the intercontinental playoff games will be played at a neutral venue in Mexico, and I do think this is a big advantage for any of these teams that do end up advancing to the World Cup, because obviously the World Cup is being played in North America, so they will already have a feel for that climate. But in this match, New Caledonia against Jamaica, Jamaica will 100% win this game. I'm sorry to New Caledonia, but in this game, there's no way that they advance. They're a very small country, and one thing that they really struggle with is set pieces, and that is actually a strength to Jamaica. They can score many goals from set pieces, from corner kicks, from free kicks. That is a big strength for Jamaica, so I think they can definitely exploit New Caledonia in this game. If New Caledonia win this game, the Jamaican national team needs to take a break. They need to take a few-year break, because even in the qualifiers, the fact that Jamaica didn't qualify directly to the World Cup is crazy. They missed out, and Curaçao ended up advancing, and they were in a fairly easy group that most people would expect Jamaica to win, but we saw them get poor results against the likes of Trinidad. Obviously we saw them lose against Curaçao, and Curaçao made it instead of Jamaica. It's possible that New Caledonia could upset Jamaica, but in my opinion, I can only see Jamaica winning this game, and I think it will be a very comfortable game for them. I'm going to predict a 3-0 win to Jamaica. And moving into the second path in the Intercontinental Playoff, the semi-final game we have is Bolivia against Sudaname. We all know that Bolivia, if they're playing at an altitude of 1,500 meters or above, they're winning. There's no chance for any other team, because when they play at home in El Alto, they look like one of the best teams in the world. We saw them beat many teams in the CONMEBOL qualification. Obviously in the last match, they beat Brazil at home. So when they play at home, they're incredible. But in this match, obviously it is at a neutral stadium, and I think Sudaname could possibly get the upset against Bolivia. If you look at Bolivia in recent matches, they have not been good at all. They've played multiple friendlies, and they've lost their last 4 out of 5 matches. We saw them lose against South Korea and Japan, then they lost against Peru, and most recently they also lost against Mexico. So Bolivia in recent matches have not been good at all, and if you look at all their recent losses, they were all being played away from home. But even though Bolivia are on such poor form, I still think they have a better overall squad than Suriname. I think this will be a very close game. I think it will actually be a 1-1 draw in full time. I think this could go to penalties, but in penalties, Bolivia will beat Suriname. And with that being said, they will advance to the final, where they will be versing Iraq. And that's the end of this video. Those were my World Cup playoff predictions for each of the semi-final matches. And obviously, if you agree with my predictions, remember to leave a comment down below. But if you disagree with my predictions, remember to leave your predictions down below, and I'll be sure to reply to every single comment. Obviously, after the semi-final matches are played, I will be releasing my final predictions on which 6 teams I think will advance to the World Cup. So if you're excited for that, remember to leave a comment down below. And if you did enjoy this video, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more videos.